one of the bullets from the machine gun struck Buck in his left temple, and it exited out his forehead, and it took away part of his skull. You could see his brain. It was pretty graphic, and I apologize for not warning you guys about that. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, K3 in Kansas. If you're new for the channel, basically what I like to do is I like to go to historical places, whether it's sports related, pop culture related, you know, anything where I can learn things and just visit cool roadside attractions, if that. So today we're here in Platte City, Missouri. Where we're at is where the Red Crown Taverns and Cabins used to be. Now, what happened here was probably one of the most famous shootouts in the history of Bonnie and Clyde. Now, this place has pretty much changed quite a bit, and right now they're doing some mowing and some trimming, so I was going to do a walk and talk and show you guys the places, but for right now we're just going to talk about it, and then as soon as they're out of the area, we'll go do a little bit of walking. So, this happened in July 18th of 1933. Now, what you need to remember is in April 13th of 1933, that's when the famous shootout in Joplin happened. Now, what's significant about this is now everybody knows who Bonnie and Clyde is due to Joplin, because they left a camera with undeveloped film in it, and that's where the Joplin Globe and the police developed that film, and now everybody knows what Bonnie and Clyde actually looks like, because before that, nobody knew what they actually looked like. Now, what you got to remember is during this time, you know, things are starting to go south for Bonnie and Clyde, you know, after Joplin, starting to slowly go downhill. Now, when they get here is when it really goes downhill, and this is pretty much the start of the beginning of the end for Bonnie and Clyde, especially Clyde's brother Buck, because here he gets mortally wounded, and he ends up dying eventually. Yeah, during this time between July, when the Joplin shooting happened, and now, Bonnie and Clyde, you know, they are down south. They're going through Arkansas, Texas, Louisiana. They had a couple kidnappings there, which I plan on talking about later in another video if I ever get the chance to do it, so we're not gonna stray off. But an important thing to know about when they're down here, now they June 10th in Wellington, Texas, they had a very, very bad car wreck. And again, this is due to Clyde just being reckless. He was driving way too fast. He was going between 70 to 80 miles per hour, and they came upon a detour, and he plowed through the detour sign, which was made of wood. He plowed through there way too fast, and the car ended up flipping a bunch of times. Now, what happens now is the car is flipped, and Clyde gets out, but Bonnie's trapped inside the car, and she has battery acid leaking from the engine of the car, and the battery acid got onto Bonnie's hip all the way down to her ankle. Now, what this does is it pretty much cripples her for the rest of the time that she's alive. Like, she can barely walk. Clyde has to carry her. People have to help her and things like that. It's pretty bad. And W.D. Jones, again, like I said in my other video, he described the wound. He described it as it was so bad on parts of her leg, her skin was gone all the way down to the bone, so you could see her bones. So the reason why they came up here was they needed a place to stop. Clyde wanted Bonnie to get some rest and hold up somewhere for a couple days. But what you got to remember here too with history is the Kansas City Massacre, which we're going to cover in another video here soon. It just happened, and Kansas City wasn't really a good spot for criminals, gangsters, and you know, mob bosses and things to go, because there was a lot of tension on Kansas City after the Kansas City Massacre. And Buck and Clyde fought about this. Buck told him, you know, do not go to Kansas City. The Kansas City Massacre just happened. We need to find some other place to go. But, you know, again, this is where Clyde is, He's not being smart about what he's doing. He's not caring about things, and he's just being dumb about what he's doing. So they decided to come here to the Red Crown Tavern. Sorry, I might get that wrong a couple times. So they come here. Now the Red Crown Tavern, it has two adjoining cabins a little bit back from where it was. So they decided to go rent the cabins. Now when they did, the owner and operator, his name was N.D. Hauser, he was suspicious from the beginning when Bonnie and Clyde and everybody arrived for numerous reasons. And they were good. He had a good mind, because what he thought was suspicious, it was. I mean, we all know that. So they had Blanche, who was Buck's wife. She walked in to rent the rooms. Now this is where red flags start going up, and I'll point them out to you guys. But for the most part, when she first went in, Blanche, she was dressed pretty different from what people would be wearing around these parts. And what I mean by that was, she walked in with some I don't know how to explain it, but there were riding pants, and you know how the riding pants are, where they're like fluffy in the hips and they're tight down to the ankle. So this was a red flag. People were like staring at her when she walked in, for good reason. Nobody around here really wore that. So Blanche walked in to pay for the rent for the rooms. Now you guys got to remember, by this time Bonnie and Clyde's jobs, their holdups and things, they're not going as planned. They didn't rob as many banks as people would think. They were doing a lot of like ma and pa shops, like grocery stores, robbing them, and like gas stations. And it got so bad to where they were robbing gum machines and candy machines. Now this is where the gumball and candy machines plays in. So Blanche goes in, dressed in her riding pants, and she wanted to rent a room, and they had 5 people, but she lied and said it was just for 3. So okay, N.D. Hauser, he was like, okay. Now this is another red flag that goes on. She rents the rooms, and she pays for it all in loose change. And this is from robbing gum machines and candy machines and things like that. And so that sets up another red flag. So while she was doing this, N.D. Hauser noticed Clyde was starting to park the car up by the cabins. So what he did, he opened up the garage door on one of the cabins, because the cabins, they had 2 garages. He opened up the door and he backed in the car. Now N.D. Hauser, he kind of knew this is what criminals during the day would do, so they could flee easily and get out of there. So that's another red flag that's popping up. Now after this happened, they all got settled down. The rooms were paid for. The car was parked in the garage. Clyde ordered Blanche to go to the restaurant and get 5 chicken dinners, 5 beers. Now Blanche warned Clyde that they only rented rooms for 3 people, and that if she went in there ordering dinners for 5, it would set things off. Again, Clyde didn't care. He said, go get it anyways. And again, that's for a lot of these shootouts and all these robberies and things that happen. Things that happened. It's pretty much, a lot of it's Clyde's fault, because he's being reckless. He's being careless. He doesn't care when people are like, hey, trying to send him warnings about, hey, this looks suspicious. He just don't care. So again, this sends up another flag, because she goes in there, she buys the 5 chicken dinners, the 5 beers, and again, she pays for it all with loose change. Now during this time, when Blanche went to go pay for the rooms, she forgot to put the license plate down on the car. So N.D. Hauser followed her back to the cabin to get the license plate, which that was normal for the day. For check-in, the guests had to leave their license plate number. But during this time, again, this plate on this car was stolen, because Clyde would keep some of the plates off of the cars he stole, and he would reuse them and switch them. So he follows her back, gets the license plate, and they go on from there. Now the next day, they wanted to stay another night. Clyde said he wanted to stay another night, so he had Blanche go back and pay for one more night. Now ND was working, and he said something awfully strange to Blanche, which threw Blanche off. Her warning signs were up. He stated that, if you decide you want a refund, you can get a refund if you decide you don't want to stay. So he was on to him. He knew he had an idea of what was going on, and he thought it could be the Barrow Gang. So, she goes back and she tells Clyde, hey, he said this to me and it's kind of weird. Now, again, Clyde just kind of, threw it off. And she told him that, I think this guy could narc us off to the cops or warn the cops. And Clyde, again, just didn't care. He just ignored it. Now, what Bonnie and Clyde and Buck and everybody did not know was the Red Crown Tavern was a hot spot where, local law enforcement agencies would meet up and, share notes, things like that, and, get their assignments for the day or whatever, and, they just get there and have dinner and, talk. Now, they didn't know this. Now, you gotta remember, too, during this time, two-way radios didn't exist, so that's why they were meeting up. Or they weren't really used a lot yet. So they were just meeting up, sharing their reports and getting assignments and things like that. So, yeah. All of this was a bad idea for them, especially after that Kansas City massacre. So, on July 19th, Missouri Highway Patrol Officer William Baxter and some of his men, they met there for lunch. Now, from what I researched, they stated either Hauser or one of his employees told Baxter about the people in the cabins, and they were acting strange. They were just being kind of sketchy. They had taped newspapers over the windows so people couldn't see in there. I mean, another red flag again. Clyde is not good at not drawing attention to himself. He just keeps doing it, and it's what causes their eventual downfall, really. A lot of this stuff does. So, this employee, or ND, Hauser, told him that the woman checking in said it was going to be 3 people, but she came in and ordered 5 chicken dinners and 5 beers. And he said he noticed a gentleman backing a car into the garage, and he knows that's what criminals would do so they could get away fast. And he informed him, too, that they put, newspapers over the window so people couldn't see in. Now Hauser, he described the car to Baxter and gave him the license plate so they can run it. Now Baxter made a note to go have this license plate ran and to check and see if it was stolen, and he then also put surveillance on the cabins, which is unknowns to Bonnie and Clyde or anybody, which I think Blanche kind of had that feeling that they were going to be watched after everything that was happened, so her radar was kind of up, but Clyde was just ignoring it. Now, after this, someone passed news or notes or, got a hold of Platte County Sheriff Holt Coffey. And Baxter and Coffey confirmed, they conferred that afternoon, and they both thought it could be the Barrow Gang. And they were, their alerts were up too. Now again, at this time, Holt, he knew that he had heard rumors that Bonnie was severely hurt. So they were putting things together and getting ready to make a plan. Now, Coffey knew how well armed the Barrow Gang was, because Clyde, he had an obsession for BIRs, which I explained in my other video, which is a Browning automatic rifle, which is basically a light machine gun, and they were pretty well off, weapon-wise. Now, Holt was, seeing what his guys had, and they had, small guns, maybe a couple shotguns, and they knew that his team would be outgunned. So Coffey went to Jackson County Sheriff Tom Bash and asked him for some machine guns, some bulletproof shields, and an armored car, and some more weapons so they could be well prepared for this. And this was one of the closest times that Bonnie and Clyde got caught. and the actual law enforcement was actually prepared for him, because for the most part on the other ones, they weren't. They were outgunned. They only had, during that time, 38 was one of the common carried handguns. So they were, for the most part, law enforcement during that time with Bonnie and Clyde, for the most part, they were always outgunned, because Clyde had just an imaginable amount of weapons with them, usually at all times. So they went to Tom Bash, and Tom Bash, he really didn't want to help very much, and he was quoted as saying he was sick of every hick sheriff thinking that they had desperados hold up in their county and wanted help. And finally Bash does give in, and he finally agreed, and the plate at that time came back to a stolen car from a V8 Ford that was stolen in Eden, Oklahoma. So they're almost, I would think by now, they're almost sure that it's Bonnie and Clyde. So so after that, they sent Blanche out for supplies for Bonnie to get medicine, bandages, and things like that. And she noticed, as soon as she'd walk into like the drugstore and places like that, people would start staring at her and they'd stop talking. And this was happening everywhere that they would go. If they would notice these guys, they would just kind of stop talking and just staring at them, because something was going on. These people were dressed completely different. They were acting different. And again, same old story. They're just throwing off red flags and drawing more attention to themselves. Now, at this time, the police and the highway patrol were starting to gather, but they were trying not to do it to where it looked suspicious, that they were planning something, and trying to stay low-key about it. And and they knew that they paid for one more night. So what they were doing during this time was planning to hit them at night and not act suspicious to have them run out. So yeah, so they were going to wait until after they made sure that they were asleep before they even acted. Now, during this time, they probably, if they would have looked out the windows, they probably could have seen things, and from what I was researched, they didn't, because of the newspaper that Clyde had put up over the window so nobody could see in. Now, at some point during this time, Clyde or Blanche walked to the drugstore. There's a lot of arguments on who actually it was, but the police, the police were actually in there. They let them come and go as they please, and kept an eye on them to not alert them. Now, once word got back that they went to this drugstore, Holt was pretty much convinced that Bonnie was in one of those houses, no doubt. Now, on 1 a.m., at 1 a.m. on July 20th is when Baxter and Coffey, they gathered their men. There was highway patrolmen, there was county cops, 2 officers from Jackson County, and an armored car. Baxter and Coffey mounted up. They had 2 of the bulletproof shields, and they had 2 machine guns, and they carried them like medieval knights. Like these shields, I'll throw up some pictures and let you guys see what it looks like, but it's like almost like a medieval shield. Now, Coffey and Baxter were in the lead. They were going to go up to the door and knock. And the Jackson County officer, George Highfield, he came in with the armored car. Now, these armored cars during this time, guys, they weren't like today's. They weren't as sophisticated, and they didn't have all the bulletproof armoring. It just had a couple extra layers of metal. And I'll put up a picture of what one would almost look like. If I can find a picture of the actual car, I don't know if I can or not, but we'll try. But yeah, so he pulls up and blocks, again like in Joplin, they blocked the garage door with the car, with the armored car, and this is when Coffey went up and knocked on the door. Now, this startled Blanche, and she got up and she asked, "Who was it?" And Coffey said, "It's the sheriff. Open up." Now, what happened there was everybody woke up, and then from the other cabin, from the right side, a male voice, which we assume was Clyde, yelled, "Just a minute." And And then about a minute or so, a couple seconds, I'm not sure how long it took, but then all of them started shooting in from the house. Clyde, Buck, WD. The shooting started from the right cabin, which I'll put up. I have pictures of the cabin, which I'll put up, and I'll show you guys. They started shooting from the right side of the cabin. Now, once this was going on, Holt and Coffee are up there with, you know, the machine guns and the shields. And Coffee's son was there with them during this, and he said when the firing was going down, the BARs, they were shooting at Baxter and Holt, or Coffee, which Holt Coffee. So I'm sorry if I confused that with you guys. But his son said when they were shooting, you could see his dad and Baxter getting pushed back because of the bar fire, which he said it looked like getting sprayed with a high pressure hose, and it was just moving them back. Now, it wasn't penetrating the shields, thank God, because they were being shot with bars and shotguns. Now, bars, again, a light machine gun, that's a bad gun. So again, yeah, he said it looked like they were being sprayed back with a hose. It was so bad that it wasn't luckily it didn't penetrate that shield, because they would be dead. Now, inside at this time, Clyde told WD Jones to go into the garage and start the Ford. So WD did. Clyde then told WD to open up the garage door, but WD was like, no, I don't want to do this. I'm too scared to do it. So with his bar in his hand, Clyde went out and he opened up the garage door, and they all begin to and he opened it up. Let me skip this a second. Let me go back a minute. When he opened it up, he seen that armored police car right there. Now this I guess it would kind of enrage Clyde a little bit, I guess, and he started going off on it. He started shooting the crap out of this armored car. Now these bars, again, like I said, they're a high-powered light machine gun, so it was easily going through this armored car, which they thought they were safe, but it wasn't. It was turning the car into Swiss cheese almost. And then again, these armored cars back in that day, they only had a couple extra plates of metal as armor. So Highfield, he was actually shot during this. He got shot in the legs twice. Now this is a key part of this, because he made a mistake, and it baffled everybody there. It baffled Bonnie and Clyde and Buck, and it even baffled his fellow law enforcement officers, because what he did eventually gave room for Bonnie and Clyde to escape. What he did was he backed up and pulled off. Let me see here. Sorry guys, I gotta read my notes because I wanted to make sure I got this right. So he backed up and he moved away several yards to the right, and this opened up a way for Clyde and everybody to cram into that car and shoot on out. So after this happened, after they witnessed it, all of them, shooting kind of stopped for a couple seconds, and everybody was just kind of baffled. Like, why did this happen? I mean, both sides. So, as you would figure, as soon as Bonnie and Clyde figured out what was happening, they jumped into the car. Now, they had to carry Bonnie because of her leg. They all climbed into that car. Well, let me rephrase that, because I just got that wrong. Now, what happened was, Clyde got Bonnie into the car, Bonnie got into the driver's seat, and they were on the right side. So Buck and Blanche were still in their apartment, and they literally had to come out the front door of the house. Now, that was almost kind of like a death sentence, almost, I would assume, because the police are right out there. So Bonnie and Clyde are in the car, and WD Jones is in the car. They have to pull out, and they have to get Buck and Blanche from their cabin. So they had to go out the front. Now, what happened? Now, during this time, okay, they were yelling for him to come. So they slammed the front door open, and they ran for the garage. The police had opened up as soon as Buck and Blanche walked out that door with heavy fire. And this is where the downfall of Buck happens. When they were going towards the car, one of the bullets from the machine gun struck Buck in his left temple, and it exited out his forehead, and it took away part of his skull. You could see his brain. It was pretty graphic, and I apologize for not warning you guys about that, but it was pretty graphic. So it came up the front of his head. You could see his brain. They were trying to do everything to get it stopped. They got him in the car. He was bad off. This was a mortal wound. He was pretty much just holding on before he died. Now, he dropped between both cabins, and so Blanche, little Blanche, she wasn't very much bigger than Bonnie, I think. She grabbed him. Clyde jumped out, grabbed him, threw him in the car, and they sped off. Now, while they were speeding off, they were going by cops. They were getting shot at still. Now, during this, a bullet was shot. It hit the back window of the car where Blanche was, and Blanche, she was huddled over Buck, and her right side of her face was exposed, and a bullet hit the back glass, shattered into her face, got into her eyes. She lost vision in one of her eyes eventually. I can't remember which one, but she lost vision in one of her eyes because of this, and she was kind of bad off. I mean, not as bad as Buck. Buck was pretty much dead. He just held on until they got out of the city eventually and got into Iowa. Now, Clyde floored the V8. He drove straight out of town, straight out of the lot, past Coffee and Baxter, and he got onto Highway 71. Now, Bonnie and Clyde weren't very good with directions, and that's why they always had to kidnap people, is they would get lost. And again, they did this too. They were out on back roads, getting lost everywhere in the county and in the state until they eventually, I guess, found their way into Iowa. And that's where they stopped in Dexter to let Buck rest and die comfortably. And that's another video I eventually want to do, because I eventually want to go there. I don't think Dexter's too far from here, maybe 4 hours. But yeah, that's basically the story of what happened here at the Red Crown Tavern. Now, I think now we're going to get out and go walk around, since they're not doing any maintenance to the lawn, it seems, and check out where things would have been. Okay, guys, and this is the actual historical marker here where the Red Crown Taverns was. Now I'll come up here and read it a little bit for you, since it's not very long. In 1931, Emmett Breen built the Red Crown Tavern and tourist cabins west of here. On July 19th, 1933, Platte County Sheriff Holt Coffey led a coalition of lawmen from the Platte County Sheriff's Office, Missouri Highway Patrol, and the Jackson County Sheriff's Office in an attempt to capture fugitives Bonnie and Clyde. Bonnie Parker, Clyde Barrow, Buck Barrow, Blanche Barrow, and W.E. Jones had rented the two cabins. 13 lawmen surrounded them, but the gang was shot their way out and escaped. Buck Barrow was mortally wounded, and Blanche's eyes were also injured. Sheriff Coffey and 2 locals were also wounded. It says, in tribute to the lawmen. Now, on another channel, Madam Morbid, I'm giving her full credit for this. I'm not trying to steal it, but I'm just wanting to let you guys know. She took a Google map and matched up pictures of area views from that time to show where the Red Crown Tavern and the cabins would have been. And for the most part, guys, it's mostly gone, and it's underwater right here. It'd be in this vicinity area. Now, I've also seen people online, they were finding bricks and things up here in the background. On this, there used to be a road here, a highway. Now it says there's a sign over there, which we'll go look at here in a minute. And I'll show you guys. I'm not from this area, so I don't know about the roads, especially back in the day. I looked up some information, and I was getting several different types of answers about this. I read that it was a service road. I read it was a highway. I read it was part of the interstate. So I'm kind of going off 3 or 4 different things because I couldn't find an exact answer about that. So we'll walk down here and I'll show you the sign, because if you drive around, you'll see the sign that says 291. And again, like I said, there was other people out here that were finding bricks and things. We'll go over here and walk around this way. But this is where the Red Crown Tavern would have been in the cabins. And I'll throw up an aerial view. I have a few from, I believe, in the 60s that showed where the cabins were, where Bonnie and Clyde were at. But for the most part, I believe it's all, it's probably, she was right about it, and it's all underwater. But it's still pretty cool to come down here and see where Bonnie and Clyde would have shot it out again. And this, again, like I said in the first part of the video, this was the downfall of Bonnie and Clyde. Just the beginning of it. The start of the end for them in their criminal spree. Now again, this area has been bulldozed and plowed and re-leveled. And I'm pretty sure in this grove of trees, too, this was an area. It's either this grove or that grove. There was a grove of trees that I've seen on the map. But yeah, I've seen people visiting here when all this brush wasn't here. I was gonna walk up in there, but guys, I'm wearing shorts, and I got a feeling that's gonna be tick and snake heaven. So we're not gonna go up there. Kind of was hoping to look and see, because people were finding bricks and things from the cabins and everything. I'm gonna walk up here enough to just see the 291 sign so you guys can see it. It's actually starting to get pretty hot out here, guys, so yeah, I'm glad I decided not to go up there. But yeah, this really was the start of the beginning of the end for Bonnie and Clyde. And this time the police were actually pretty prepared for them, and they're lucky they got away. And again, the officer that moved the armored car, I would suspect, is the main reason they did get away. And as I was saying, Bonnie and Clyde were shocked. His fellow officers were shocked. I mean, the only thing I can think of is because he got shot, he got scared and wanted to get away from it. But they all said if you would have just stayed there, the officers could have surrounded the cabins, and they probably would have got Bonnie and Clyde or killed them. That sign is right up there. We're gonna go see it real quick and then end the video there. But yeah, there was videos of people finding bricks and things out here in this field out here. And again, when they were, none of this brush was here. This was like probably 4 years ago, I think that video was. But we'll go up here, turn around and see this sign. I wanted to go up there, but guys, again, I'm not gonna get ate up with ticks and snakes and whatever's in there now, because that used to be a road. And the map images I put up, you'll see it. But see there, it says junction. I don't know if I need to walk back a little bit and then see if I can zoom in. But yeah, there's this, yeah, you can see it here. Junction 291, and it looks like it's an off-ramp going this way to me. But yeah, I'm sure this place has changed a lot, and I know it has since then. But we will, this is the Red Crown Taverns, where probably the most famous shootout of them happened between Bonnie and Clyde and law enforcement. And pretty cool to come up here and see at least there's something acknowledging it, you know. A lot of their stuff is being demolished. A lot of history too. Things are being demolished and not saved, and people are still fighting for them. Like just an example is in Hollywood. There's people fighting to have Marilyn Monroe's house saved because the owner wants to destroy it. And this is the house where she died. And just kind of sad. Some things people are just, I understand it. If you own it and you want to destroy it. I understand that point, but also, you know, that's a pretty historic house. So there's that. I'm on either fence. I'd like to see it personally stay and not destroy it. But again, going off topic a little bit, but yeah, just a lot of things changing. But yeah, this would be roughly where the Red Crown Taverns were. So we will end the video here, and I hope you guys have a good day.